The knock came sharp at my door, pulling me from the edge of the final slide I'd been staring at for hours. My heart thudded once, hard, as I crossed the room. My career balanced on this presentation, and now Sarah was here, my mentor, the one whose word could launch or sink me. Unspoken tension hung in the air already, her presence always pulling at something deeper I couldn't name. I opened the door, wind whispering through the crack, carrying the faint chill of evening. She stepped in, coat brushing my arm, and the laptop on the table hummed to life as I closed the door behind us. We settled close, the screen's glow cutting the dim room, stakes pressing in like the gathering dark outside. I'd spent the afternoon pacing, notes scattered across the desk like fallen leaves, printouts of charts, scribbled margins questioning every data point. Anxiety coiled tight in my chest, fingers itching to rearrange the chaos one last time. This presentation wasn't just slides. It was my thesis defense in miniature, the bridge to everything I'd worked for. Sarah's feedback could rewrite it all, or worse, expose the cracks I'd hidden. I wiped my palms on my jeans, the fabric rough under my hands, and glanced at the clock. Her arrival loomed, turning the quiet apartment into a held breath. The door opened with a soft click, and there she was, framed against the hallway light. Sarah shrugged off her coat, the motion releasing a faint scent of wind and city rain clinging to the wool. It mixed with the stale air of my space, sharpening everything. Her eyes met mine, briefly, steady, assessing, before she nodded toward the table. "Ready?" she asked, voice low and even, carrying that unflinching tone that always grounded me. I stepped aside, the door shutting with a thud that echoed my pulse. She moved with purpose, setting her bag down, the strap thudding lightly against the chair. We settled at the small table, knees almost brushing under it. I pulled the laptop closer, the fan whirring low as it woke fully, a steady hum filling the space between us. It vibrated through the wood, syncing with the slight wind rattling the window pane outside. Soft pushes against the glass, like the world testing boundaries. Sarah leaned in, her sleeve grazing the edge of the table, and I opened the file. The screen brightened, casting blue light across her face, highlighting the line of her jaw. Sparse words passed. "Start from the beginning," she said, pulling a notepad from her bag. Her pen tapped once, subtle, on the table edge. Tap, pause, marking the rhythm we both felt. I clicked to the first slide, the title looming large. My voice came out steadier than I expected, outlining the project's scope, but inside, preparation anxiety lingered, notes blurring in my mind. The desk's clutter pressed at the edges of my vision. Highlighters, crumpled drafts, reminders of the hours poured in. Sarah listened, head tilted slightly, her coat draped over the chair back like a shed skin. The wind whispered again, faint through the seals, underscoring the room's closeness. Our chairs scraped as she shifted, settling deeper into the review. Her entrance had shifted the air immediately, that faint wind scent trailing her like an echo. It clung to the space now, mixing with the laptop's warmth. Initial greetings stayed brief. No small talk about the drive or the weather, just the nod to work. She flipped open her notepad, pen poised, and the tapping resumed, subtle at first, a single finger against the wood. Tap. It matched the computer's low whir, building a focused rhythm that pulled me in. I pointed to the intro slide, explaining the methodology, words tumbling out amid the hum. Anxiety from the preparation ebbed slightly under her gaze, but the clutter on the desk mocked me still. Notes stacked uneven, a coffee stain marking one corner. Sarah's presence amplified it all, her coat's scent fading into the room's warmth. We leaned closer over the laptop, elbows nearly touching, the wind's soft rattle punctuating my pauses. "Solid start," she murmured, pen tapping again, tap, tap, during a beat of silence. The sound grounded the moment, her eyes flicking to mine briefly, holding just long enough to stir that unspoken pull. As we moved through the early framework, the computer's fan strained a notch higher, whirring against the wind's whispers. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, anxiety threading through each click. Sarah's notepad filled with her precise script, the the pen's tap evolving into a subtle pattern on the table edge. Rhythmic. Insistent. The room felt smaller, our proximity charging the air. Notes cluttered the desk's edge, brushing her arm once as she gestured. I caught the faint wind scent again when she adjusted her position, coat shifting. The transition came naturally, eyes meeting briefly over the screen as I advanced to the next slide. Her gaze lingered, unflinching, before dropping back to the content. The laptop hummed on, wind pushing faintly outside, finger taps fading into the flow. Preparation's weight lifted a fraction, but the stakes hummed beneath it all. We dove into the project structure right away, the first few slides laying out the framework like bones under skin. I explained the flow, how the data fed into the analysis, words steady, but my mind racing ahead to her corrections. Sarah nodded once, her pen scratching quick notes on the pad. Sharp lines, no flourish. Here, she said, pointing to the second slide, voice even, tighten the transitions, the logic jumps. Her correction landed precise, cutting through my explanation without mercy, but it built on what she'd taught me before. I clicked back, adjusting on the spot, the laptop's keys clicking under my fingers. Her hand gestured as she spoke, palm up, guiding the air like she mapped the room's edges. The pen paused midair then, hovering over the screen, tip glinting in the blue light. I watched it, the pause stretching a beat too long, her focus pulling the oxygen thin. Wind rattled the window faintly outside, a soft scrape against glass, amplifying how close we sat. The room shrank with it, our chairs inches apart, knees brushing the table's underside. That rattle echoed my building reliance on her, the way she'd steered me through drafts over months, her guidance a thread I clung to. Sparse dialogue filled the gaps, just facts on data points. This metric, source it better, she murmured, tapping the pen once on the table. Tap. The sound quickened as I hesitated, fumbling for the reference file. Her eyes flicked to mine, unflinching, holding until I found it. Silences lengthened after that, heavy with the computer's whir, its fan spinning steady against the wind's push. I reflected on her history with me, late nights in her office, her breaking down complex models until they clicked. That reliance grew here, in this dim space, her presence making the work feel alive, urgent. She leaned forward slightly, elbow on the table, her sleeve whispering against wood. The structure holds, but push the implications harder. Her words came deliberate, each one measured, but the pen's tap sped up during my pauses. Tap, tap, marking my stumbles. I noted her hand again, fingers curling around the pen, veins standing taut under skin. The wind picked up outside, rattling harder, the sound bleeding into the room's closeness. Our breaths synced with it, shallow, the laptop's hum threading underneath like a pulse. Internal thoughts swirled as we moved, slide by slide. Her guidance had always been this, firm, revealing flaws I missed, building my confidence layer by layer. But tonight, reliance tipped into something sharper, her correction stirring that unspoken pull. I explained a key data set, voice catching on a detail, and she interjected, soft. Elaborate here. Why this variable? Sparse, yes, but her tone drew me out, silences stretching as I gathered words. The pen paused midair once more, her gaze on me, not the screen. Wind rattled again, faint but insistent, the glass vibrating under the pressure. It amplified everything, the heat from the laptop warming my thighs, her scent faint now, mixed with paper and ink. Finger taps quickened when I faltered on projections, tap, 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 her rhythm urging me on. I caught her hand gesture, open palm slicing the air to emphasize a point, precise as always. Reliance deepened in those moments, her history with me flashing, emails at dawn, her pushing me past doubts. The room's closeness pressed it home, our proximity turning professional into personal without a word. Dialogue stayed lean, data points traded like cards. Cross-reference this with the appendix, she said, pen tapping slower now, deliberate. Silences grew, filled by the computer's whir and wind's scrape. I reflected on how she'd shaped me, her unflinching feedback a lifeline in the grind. That building trust hummed now, laced with tension, her presence too near, too steady. As we wrapped the early slides, her corrections stacked neat in my mind. The laptop fan whirred on, wind fading to whispers outside. Her pen tapped once more, final, eyes meeting mine over the glow. Deeper now, she said, leaning closer, the shift pulling us into the core. We pushed into the visuals next, the slides filling with graphs and images I'd labored over for weeks. Sarah's feedback came detailed, her voice steady but carrying an intensity that pinned me in place. This chart, colors clash here. Simplify the palette, she said, leaning in to trace the line on the screen with her finger. Her nail scraped lightly against the glass, the sound cutting through the laptop's hum. I nodded, pulse quickening to match the whir, each beat echoing the fan's spin. The shared space pressed closer now, her arm inches from mine, the table's edge digging into my elbow as I adjusted the file. Wind sounds swelled outside, a low push against the window that mirrored the unease rising in my gut. It rattled the pain harder, like breaths building to a sigh, amplifying the room's heat. Our knees brushed under the table once, accidental, but neither shifted away. Sarah's suggestions overrode my doubts without force, just certainty in her tone. Trust this pivot. It strengthens the arc, she murmured, her words landing like decisions already made. The power dynamic surfaced, subtle, her experience guiding mine, pulling me under her focus. I questioned it inside, why her attention felt so unflinching tonight, holding longer on me than the slides. She adjusted her glasses then, fingers pushing the frames up the bridge of her nose, the motion drawing my gaze to the sharp line of her eyes. They refocused on the screen, intense, scanning every pixel. My pulse thudded with the computer's rhythm, awareness of her sharpening, the faint warmth from her skin cutting the air between us. Expand this image, she said, voice dropping a notch, steady as she pointed. I complied, the click loud in the quiet, wind swelling again outside to underscore the shift. Her presence loomed, suggestions weaving through my explanations, overriding hesitations I'd nursed alone. Internal questions piled up as we worked. Her unflinching attention, did it always carry this weight, or was the room closing it in? The laptop hummed louder, fans straining under the load, syncing my breaths to its cycle. Shared space turned intimate without words, her elbow grazing mine as she noted a flaw. Here, the alignment's off. Fix it now. Power tilted toward her, natural from years of her shaping my path. But tonight, it stirred unease, a pull I couldn't shake. Wind pushed harder, rattling the glass like rising tension, the sound bleeding into my thoughts. She leaned back slightly, glasses catching the screen's glow, her focus unbroken. These visuals sell the story. Refine them, and it lands. Her voice held that intensity, words precise, overriding my second guess on the layout. I felt the dynamic deepen, her guidance not just professional, but commanding the moment. Pulse hammered with the hum, awareness flooding, the scent of her shampoo faint now, mixed with the laptop's plastic warmth. Wind swelled once more, a gust pressing the window, mirroring the unease coiling tighter. Why did her eyes linger like that, unflinching? Pulling questions I buried under the work. We paused on a complex diagram, her finger tapping the table edge, tap, tap, quickening as I explained the layers. The sound wove into the computer's whir, wind swell fading to echoes. Her glasses adjustment came again, deliberate, drawing my gaze to her profile, the focus etching lines around her mouth. Subtle power emerged in her overrides, doubts dissolving under her steady push. Internal churn grew, her attention felt heavier, questions on its edge unanswered. The room's closeness amplified it, shared space turning the review into something charged. Let's break, she said finally, voice even but laced with that intensity. Coffee? I stood, pulse still synced to the fading hum, wind settling outside. The brief pause heightened anticipation, her eyes holding mine a beat too long as she rose. We returned to the table with fresh mugs, steam curling up between us, the coffee's bitterness cutting through the room's staleness. Sarah slid her chair back in, the scrape pulling my attention, and we resumed with the core arguments, the heart of the presentation, where my ideas stood rawest. I clicked forward, outlining the central thesis, words flowing steadier now, but her finger tapped the table edge in time with my nerves. Tap, pause, tap, mirroring the jitter in my chest. It echoed the laptop's whir, low and insistent, as if the machine picked up on the undercurrent. She nodded, eyes on the screen, but the tapping quickened when I paused to breathe, urging without words. The computer's fan mixed with the wind's soft push outside, a layered hum that filled the silences, the glass flexing faintly under each gust. It overlapped with our breaths, shallow and synced, turning the space intimate without effort. I caught her expression during one lull, unreadable, lips pressed thin, gaze fixed on a bullet point but drifting, perhaps, to the edge of my profile. The look held no judgment, just depth, pulling at me in the quiet. "This argument," she said, voice dropping to match the whir. "It carries your voice, but layer in the counterpoint sooner." Her words landed close, her mug's heat brushing my arm as she gestured. Dialogue shifted briefly, turning personal amid the work pressures. "These deadlines grind you down," I admitted, fingers hovering over the keys, the confession slipping out as I adjusted a slide. "Nights like this, staring at screens till dawn." Sarah's tapping slowed, her finger stilling for a beat. "They do," she replied, eyes meeting mine over the rim of her mug. "But you push through it. That's what sets you apart." The exchange hung there, sparse but weighted, her tone carrying empathy that surfaced the unspoken admiration I'd buried from past sessions. Those office hours where she'd lean over my shoulder, breaking down failures until they reshaped into strengths. Her guidance then had felt like a lifeline, admiration building quiet in the margins, now stirring sharper in this closeness. Proximity increased as we shared pages across the table, her notepad sliding toward me, our hands nearly overlapping when I pointed to her notes. The laptop warmed the wood beneath it, heat seeping up, mixing with the faint chill from the window where wind pushed soft, persistent. I leaned in to read her script, shoulder brushing hers, the contact brief but electric, pulling the air tighter. She didn't pull back, just traced a line with her finger, explaining the revision, her breath warm against my ear. Past sessions flashed, her office desk cluttered like mine now, her unflinching focus drawing me out, admiration unspoken but rooting deep. Tonight it surfaced in the way my pulse matched her tapping, nerves mirroring across the table. The whir of the computer blended deeper with the wind's push, a sensory overlap that underscored every pause, her unreadable expression lingering in silences that stretched longer. "Work like this tests everything," she added, voice low, turning personal again on the isolation of late revisions, the pressure of stakes no one else saw. I nodded, sharing a fragment of my own grind, the doubt that crept in after hours alone. Her response came measured, finger tapping once more to punctuate, but slower, almost soothing my rhythm. Reflection deepened on those earlier meetings, her patience surfacing admiration I'd kept hidden. The way she'd see through my hesitations, building me steady. Proximity pressed it forward, pages shared pulling us closer. Elbows touching now, as we debated a phrasing. Wind's soft gust rattled the pane, the computer's hum rising to meet it, nerves thrumming in the overlap. Her expression stayed unreadable in the next silence, eyes on me a fraction too long, stirring the pull. Dialogue edged personal once more. "You've grown past what I expected," she said, mug set down with a soft clink, before circling back to the slides. Past admiration welled clearer, unspoken then, but alive now in the shared space. As we neared the challenging section, her leaning in tighter, tension peaked subtly, the tapping fading into a held breath, eyes locking over the screen's glow. We hit the key finding slide, the data raw and exposed, my voice steady as I laid out the conclusions. Sarah debated it sharp, her questions probing deep into the evidence. This finding, back it with the outlier data, she said, leaning across to highlight the graph, her hand brushing mine accidental on the trackpad. Skin met skin, warm and brief, but it sent a jolt up my arm, lingering like the laptop's heat. I pulled back slow, heart thudding harder. The computers were picking up the rhythm, fan spinning faster under the load. Wind outside underscored it all, pushing against the window in soft bursts that matched my pulse. Thud. Whir. Push. The glass flexed faintly, the sound bleeding in, amplifying the closeness. Sarah's posture went taut, shoulders squared close to mine as she scrutinized the numbers, her elbow inches from my side. I observed it, the tension in her frame, muscles held tight under her shirt, like she carried the critique's weight in her bones. Our breaths synced to the hum, shallow pulls in the narrowing space, the brush of her hand replaying in my mind, forbidden thoughts creeping in during her focused stare. I explained the implications, words careful, but inside, the monologue churned. What if this pull wasn't just admiration, but something sharper, crossing lines we'd never named? Her guidance always stirred it. Late feedback sessions where her eyes held too long, now amplified in this room. The accidental touch fueled it, heat from her fingers echoing the computer's warmth, pulling questions I buried under the work. Why did her proximity feel like this tonight? Taut and insistent. Shoulders so close I felt the shift in her breathing. She affirmed sparse, voice low over the whir. Strong here, it ties back clean. The words built an undercurrent, emotional layers threading through the professional, her tone carrying warmth that matched the wind's push. I nodded, advancing the slide, but the brush lingered in my grip on the mouse, forbidden edges sharpening in the critique's focus. Her posture stayed taut, shoulders brushing the air between us, close enough to stir the air's thickness. Internal thoughts twisted, desire hidden under reliance. The way her hand felt against mine, rough from pens and keys, pulling at barriers I'd built high. Wind gusted again, underscoring the thud of my heart against the computer's steady spin, rhythms overlapping in the quiet. Sparse affirmations continued, her yes, expand that, landing soft but weighted, building the pull without rush. I caught her scent faint, mixed with the room's warmth, as she leaned to note something, shoulders nearly touching. The monologue deepened, forbidden wants surfacing, imagining her hand staying, the critique turning to us, but I shoved it down, focusing on the data. Her focus held me, unflinching, the accidental brush a spark in the undercurrent. Finger tapping slowed on the table edge, her rhythm shifting from quick to deliberate. Tap, pause, signaling something easing in her demeanor. It pulled my gaze to her hand, veins standing under skin, the motion less urgent now, almost inviting. Wind pushed softer outside, the heartbeat thud sinking looser with the whir, but the tension coiled tighter. I debated a counterpoint, voice catching, and she affirmed again, sparse. It works. Trust it. The words hummed emotional, undercurrents rising as her shoulders relaxed a fraction, closeness pressing the unspoken forward. We lingered on the findings, her taut posture softening at the edges, shoulders close enough to feel the warmth. Internal churn grew, those forbidden thoughts during her critique, the brush replaying, desire threading through the affirmations. The computer's hum filled the gaps, wind underscoring the shift, finger taps slowing further, demeanor turning inward. She set her pen down then, materials sliding aside slight, eyes holding mine longer over the screen's glow, the pull emerging clear in the quiet. We advanced to the final slides, the conclusions wrapping tight around the data like a knot pulled firm. I outlined the takeaways, voice steady as I tied the threads together. But Sarah's tone shifted, dropping lower, almost a murmur that blended with the laptop's whir. This wraps it. Clean, but make the call to action sharper, she said, her words carrying a weight that went beyond the screen, probing without rush. The computer's fan strained slightly now, spinning harder under the session's load, a low thrum vibrating through the table into my palms. It synced with my pulse, quickening as her gaze held mine a beat longer after each point. Unflinching, but changed. Deeper. Like she saw past the slides, to the drive behind them. Wind gusts picked up outside, pushing harder against the window, the glass creaking under the force, a raw edge to the sound that cut through the room's warmth. It amplified everything, the gusts swelling like breaths held too long, mirroring the coil building between us. I sensed the shift in her eyes first, that steady focus softening at the edges, not leaving the content but lingering on me, tracing the line of my jaw when I paused to click forward. Her resilience in this role flashed through my mind, years of guiding protégés like me through the grind, her feedback always unflinching, carved from her own climbs up the ladder, nights she'd mentioned once in passing, poring over reports till dawn. That strength pulled at me now, her voice lower still as she leaned in. What drives this passion in you? The work, it's not just deadlines. Tell me. Her question hung there, dialogue turning inward, probing the core of why I'd poured myself into this. I hesitated, fingers still on the trackpad, the fan's strain rising with the wind's push, gusts rattling the pane like an urgent knock. It's the breakthrough, I said finally, voice matching her low tone, the words spilling out raw. Finding patterns no one else sees, turning chaos into something solid. You've shown me how. Her eyes held mine then, prolonged, the contact coiling tension through the air, her gaze unflinching but laced with something new. Recognition, perhaps, of the fire she'd kindled. The computer's whir filled the silence after, fan laboring as I advanced the last slide. But her focus stayed on me, resilience shining in the way she nodded, slow, absorbing it without interruption. Reflection deepened on her guidance, that unyielding support through my stumbles, the revision she'd walked me through, her patience a quiet force against the field's doubts. Wind gusted again, harder, the window flexing with a low groan, sensory edges sharpening the moment, the room's closeness pressing her gaze closer. Passion like that, she murmured, voice dropping further. It's rare, holds everything together. The words probe deeper, drawing out more on the late nights alone, the thrill of connections clicking into place, her eyes never leaving mine, the prolonged stare coiling tighter, breaths sinking to the fan's strain. I felt exposed under it, her resilience mirroring my own emerging drive, the way she'd built me steady, layer by unflinching layer. The laptop hummed on, fans straining against the wind swells outside. Gusts pushing rhythmic now, underscoring the shift in her gaze. Still steady, but warmer, pulling questions I didn't voice. Dialogue eased into my passion's roots, her low tone guiding. And the doubts? How do you push past? I shared fragments, the isolation of the work, how her insights had cut through it. Her eyes holding longer, tension threading through the eye contact, coiling like wire under pull. Her resilience surfaced clearer in memory. Her stories of early career setbacks, shared sparse over coffee once. Her voice then as now, low and sure, turning scars into strategy. The wind rattled sharp, fan whirring higher, the overlap intensifying, her gaze unflinching, changed, drawing me in. We lingered on the final slide, her lower voice affirming sparse. It lands. You've got it. But the probe lingered, eyes locking prolonged, tension coiling through the silence, wind gusting insistent outside. Reflection on her role tightened the pull, her guidance a backbone I'd leaned on, resilience forged in the same pressures I face now. The fan strained once more, room heating with it, her gaze holding, the coil peaking subtle. She reached for her notepad then, materials closing slow, the snap soft against the whir. I'm done hiding, she said, voice deliberate, low, eyes still on mine. the confession initiating as the wind pushed one last gust. Her words landed heavy in the quiet. I'm done hiding. Voice deliberate, slicing through the laptop's fading whir like a blade through cloth. Attraction. She didn't say it outright, but it hung there, raw in the space between us. Her eyes unflinching, locked on mine. The screen's glow dimmed as the file idled, casting her face in softer shadows, the lines around her mouth tightening just once before easing. I froze, body going still, surprise clamping down like a hand on my throat, breath caught mid-inhale. The computer's hum filled the silence then, steady and mechanical, vibrating through the table into my palms, the only sound besides the wind's low push outside, framing the moment in faint rattles against the glass. Inside, processing churned raw, thoughts tumbling over each other, heat rising in my chest, tight and unfamiliar. Her confession reframed everything. The late office hours, her gaze lingering on my notes, the way she'd leaned close during revisions, breath warm on my shoulder. I'd chalked it up to focus, to the grind of academia, but now it twisted, pulling at threads I'd buried deep under deadlines and doubts. The wind pushed again, softer now, the pain flexing with a whisper that echoed my pulse, thudding uneven against the hum. Surprise held me pinned, eyes wide on hers, the room shrinking around us, air thick with the unsaid. Sarah's hand stayed on the table, palms flat against the wood, fingers splayed still. No tapping now, just the weight of them anchoring the moment. She breathed steady, chest rising slow, the rhythm pulling mine to match it without effort. It's been building, she said, voice low, deliberate, sharing snippets of her journey like fragments of stone smoothed by time. Early in my career, those conferences, women in sharp suits, conversations that lingered after the panels, I watched, felt the pull, but pushed it down. Department politics, expectations like walls. Dated men to fit the mold, quick and hollow, until a colleague, late nights grading, her hand on my arm, cracked it open. Her eyes didn't leave mine, unflinching, the confession threading through the whir, wind framing it in soft gusts that rattled the window like distant applause. Finger tapping had ceased entirely, replaced by that steady breathing. Her inhales even, drawing the air between us deeper. I watched her hands, veins standing faint under skin, unmoving. The stillness amplifying the vulnerability in her posture. Shoulders easing forward, the armor of her focus slipping. The computer's hum droned on, fan slowing to a low thrum, syncing with her breaths, the wind's whispers underscoring the raw edges of her words. She shared more, sparse. A hidden relationship in grad school, ended by whispers in the halls. The isolation of single rooms in hotels, scrolling profiles late, desire coiled tight until it ached. Hiding it wore me down, she murmured, hand still. Until your drive, the way you lean in during sessions. It mirrored back what I'd suppressed. Echoes surfaced in me then, buried feelings rising like silt stirred in still water. I'd felt it too. Those moments in her office, her pen pausing mid-note as our eyes met, heat flushing my neck I'd blamed on the radiator. Attractions to women flickered in memory, classmates with quick laughs, a TA's steady gaze. But none stuck like hers, the pull sharpening in proximity, forbidden under the power she held. Surprise thawed slow, giving way to recognition. My chest loosening as the wind pushed faint outside, the hum filling gaps where words failed. I'd hidden it under ambition, fearing the imbalance, the risk of her rejection shattering the guidance I relied on. But now, her vulnerability cracked mine open, breaths sinking to the steady rhythm, hands itching to move but held back. The laptop's whir evened out, wind calming to echoes against the glass, her hands unmoving on the table, steady breaths weaving through the silence. Internal churn settled into mutuality, her journey snippets pulling mine forward. Sparse admissions of stolen glances, the ache of unspoken wants during feedback loops. Vulnerability hung shared, raw but grounding, her eyes holding mine without demand, just the truth laid bare. I see it in you too, she said, soft. Voice deliberate still. The acknowledgement bridging us. The moment stretched, breath steady. The pull easing into something spoken. Leading toward what came next. Practical words on boundaries, on steps forward in the dim light. Her words cracked something open in me. The acknowledgement pulling my own truth forward, like a hand reaching through fog. I set my hands flat on the table, mirroring hers. The wood cool under my palms now that the laptop's heat had spread even. It's there, I said, voice scraping low, rough as gravel shifting under tires, the confession spilling out raw. The pull. I felt it too, in those sessions, your focus drawing me closer than it should. The words hung, sparse but heavy, my chest tightening with the release, surprise fading into the ache of years unspoken. Her eyes held mine, unflinching, the dim light catching the steady rise of her breath. Wind calmed outside, the gusts easing to faint whispers against the glass, no longer pushing, but settling like dust after a truck's pass. The computers were even too, fans slowing to a low hum, steady now, vibrating soft through the table into our joined stillness. It grounded the moment, the rhythms syncing our breaths, pulling the air between us quieter, warmer. Sarah's hand shifted then, fingers brushing mine brief, the touch lingering a second longer than needed. Rough skin meeting rough, calluses from pens and keyboards pressing light before she drew back slow. Quiet empathy filled her gaze, no rush in it, just a nod that eased the knot in my gut. Her thumb tracing the table's edge once, absent, like mapping the shift. Power had always tilted between us, her role as mentor a wall I'd leaned against. Guidance shaping my path while I stayed in her shadow. But now it dissolved, edges blurring into equality, the imbalance cracking under the shared weight. No longer just student and guide, her vulnerability leveled it, turning reliance into mutuality, the dynamic loosening like a cinch belt eased after a long ride. I felt it in the way her shoulders dropped a fraction, the unflinching focus softening to something reciprocal, our positions swapping in the quiet, both exposed now in the room's closeness. The wind's calm underscored it, computers' even hum threading through, making the space feel shared, not commanded. We exchanged sparse on the past then, words traded like fragments over coffee. That office meeting last spring, I said, voice low, direct, addressing her straight. You leaned over the desk, explaining the pivot, and your hand stayed on the page near mine. I pulled back too quick, heart thudding like the printer jamming down the hall. She nodded, eyes meeting mine without blink, the memory pulling her lips tight. I noticed, felt the same pull, but let it pass. Power lines too clear then. Her response came quiet, empathy in the tilt of her head, the brief touch replaying in the air between us. Another moment surfaced, the conference hallway, her arm brushing mine amid the crowd, warmth lingering as we walked. Overlooked it, she murmured, voice deliberate. Blamed the crowd's press. Vulnerability flowed direct, addressing each other raw. I hid behind the work, I added. Your guidance too vital to risk. She echoed it, soft. Same. Feared losing the thread we built. The exchange wove us tighter, past moments reframed in the even were, winds calm holding the room steady. Vulnerability shared through that direct gaze, no hedges, just truths laid bare. Her empathy pulling mine forward, the touch's echo warming my fingers still. Power's dissolve settled deep, equality rooting in the mutuality. Our breaths sinking looser now, the ache easing into resolve. Reflection hit clear. Those overlooked glances, the hidden wants under professional layers, now voiced, turning tension to foundation. The computer's hum filled the pauses, wind whispering faint outside, grounding the shift as we leaned closer, eyes holding without demand. Resolve formed quiet in that space, the emotional reckoning pulling us toward steps ahead. We navigate this, I said, voice gaining ground, addressing her steady. Her nod came sure, hand brushing mine again brief, the touch sealing it. Wind stayed calm, We're even. The forward pull clear now, leading us on. We let the words settle then. The table between us holding the weight of what we'd named. No rush to fill the quiet. Sarah's hand drew back slow from mine, fingers parting deliberate, the brief warmth fading into the wood's cool grain. I felt the shift, the vulnerability coiling into something practical now. Our breaths evening out as the laptop's hum dropped lower, fan winding down from the long session. We talk boundaries first, she said, voice steady, low, eyes meeting mine without flinch. This department, eyes everywhere, committees that sniff out anything off script. No overlaps in meetings, no shared credits that raise flags. Her words mapped it clear, like outlining a project timeline, her hand gesturing once over the closed screen, palm slicing the air to separate lines. I nodded. The computers were softening further, almost a murmur now, syncing with the wind's quiet outside. The gusts gone, leaving faint sighs against the glass, the pain still, at last. Work stays work, I echoed, leaning back in the chair, the scrape light on the floor. Emails professional, feedback through channels. But after hours, we carve out space. The idea pulled forward, practical steps threading through the pull we'd admitted, her outline grounding it against the career grind that loomed. She agreed with a tilt of her head, fingers drumming once on the table edge, not urgent, but marking the rhythm of forward motion. Discreet meetings off-site, she added, voice deliberate. No campus paths, no traces in logs. Weekends, if schedules align, coffee shops beyond the quad, places where faces blur into crowds. The room cooled slightly as the laptop idled deeper, heat dissipating from the vents, the hum fading to near silence, wind's whispers quieting to nothing, the night outside settling heavy. I suggested spots then, safe spaces pulling from the city's edges. That cafe in the valley, off the main drag, neutral ground, no one from our circle. Or the park trails on Sundays, early, when the paths empty out. My words came measured, addressing her direct, the suggestions building on her framework, pacing the relationship amid the demands that pressed us both. Deadlines stacked like unchecked boxes, her 10-year reviews mirroring my defense prep. But we wove it in. Nights for us carved from the margins, slow builds without haste. Sarah's eyes held mine, unflinching, as she nodded, her hand reaching to shut the laptop fully, the screen clicking dark with a soft snap, the whir ceasing entirely, leaving only our breaths in the hush. Pace it right, she said, voice low, thumb tracing the closed lid once. No rushing the lines we cross. Career first, yours especially, with the presentation looming. We separate the roles clean. Mentor in daylight, this, us, in the shadows till it's solid. Agreement settled between us, shared certainty humming quiet, her posture easing forward, shoulders dropping as hands parted slower this time, fingers brushing last, calluses grazing like a promise sealed light. The emotional payoff landed there, in that certainty. No grand swells, just the warmth of paths mapped together, the pull turning steady against the stakes. We stood then, chairs pushing back with faint scrapes, the table clearing of notes and mugs, the clutter from earlier hours now just echoes. Sensory layers faded fully, computer silence absolute, winds quiet wrapping the room in even dark, the evening's tension uncoiling into resolve. We'll text logistics tomorrow, she murmured, coat slipping on, the wool brushing her arms as she shrugged it close. I walked her to the door, the floor cool underfoot, our steps synced without touch. Practical words lingered, reminders of discretion, the safe cafes and trails as anchors. Hands parted one final time at the threshold, her fingers squeezing mine brief, the certainty rooting deep amid the career's pull. Her silhouette faded into the windswept night, door clicking shut behind the chill. If this stirs your hidden truths, share below.